Welcome to my Mary Magdalene pilgrimage. My name is Renee Massey. I have been on this journey with Mary Magdalene since late 2022. And because I am going to France in mid to late October of this year, I really wanted to document and share so much of what I have journeyed through in this devotion or pilgrimage with Mary Magdalene. And there's going to be a lot of things that I shared. There's going to be a lot of things to contemplate. There is going to be a lot of transformation and soul reclamation, I feel, that will happen along this journey. And so I just want to offer some backstory as to kind of like how I got here and why I have actually chosen to share this journey with everyone because I have been doing a lot of spiritual, metaphysical, divine, soulful work for like 27 years. And I started very young because I'm only 43. So to be doing this for, as long as I've been doing it, there's a lot of context here. I did not just all of a sudden pop out of the box and be like, I want to go on a Mary Magdalene pilgrimage. And so I want to just document all of that and share that journey with you. This has actually been building up for a very, very, very long time. It's interesting when you give yourself space to kind of zoom out and gain perspective and reflect back on the choices you've made and the way you've lived your life and the things that you've gravitated to and the things that you have absolutely gravitated against, things that have repelled you and you have kind of gone in the other direction of. It's a very curious thing to understand how we get to where we get in life and the choices that we make and the things that we very strongly align with and find coherency with. And other people share different opinions in that. It's like there's contrast. I was born and raised Catholic. I no longer align with Catholicism. And so this is not a journey of Catholicism or Christianity or biblical anything. Like there will be things that I share along this journey that are absolutely relevant to what I have learned through dogmatic practice and indoctrinated materials, canonical gospels. But there is also a very, very, very strong relevancy that is on the opposite end of the spectrum and has nothing to do with religion at all. It's actually a journey of the anthropos, the divine human, the fullness of your humanity, really allowing yourself to embody the soul purpose, the soul centeredness. It's so funny. We talk about like self centeredness and how people can be so self centered and selfish and, self righteous and they think about themselves only and they put themselves first and all of that. And honestly, I have some interesting introspections on that. But also looking at the soul centeredness. And when I am living a life that is completely centered within my soul and centered within my heart, what does that mean in terms of how I'm going to live my life and how I'm going to extend that into relationships, into my work, into my family, just into my direction altogether? I cannot live my life on this surface level experience. It has been incredibly difficult for me to put myself in a box. And what that means is, I was born into Catholicism. This is the religion that both sides of my family, on my father's side and my mother's side, had adopted. It is in our heritage. It's not like all of a sudden they woke up one day and they were like, you know what, this is a really great idea. And this is what we want to practice and how we want to raise our family and the values along this path. It's like generation after generation after generation after generation after generation, this has just been the thing. And there were definitely people in my family that I felt like did not walk that path, that do not walk that path. I feel that there are some people that just show up to do the thing, to go through the motions. It became very curious to me at a very young age, like observing, I was always listening, I was watching, I was listening and paying attention to whatever's going on. And I can remember really actually enjoying going to church when I was very little with my grandparents. But then I also remember as I got older and I started having my own thoughts and my own feelings based on what I was learning, I was like, I would take that information in, it would kind of get swirled around. And then based on that, I would be like, wait. And so I have questions now. But I'm also a 1-3 in human design. I am a 1-3 sacral authority manifesting generator. And so I tend to push things and I tend to go really, really forensically deep with things because it's just kind of like how the circuitry of my mind and my body and all of these things kind of come together for me. So I would reflect back on things that I was learning, and then ask questions. And I did not really feel like my questions were being answered in the best ways, where it's like kind of these open ended questions or these they just didn't wanna answer because they didn't have the answer, or there was also the times that I asked questions that it seemed like they were offended that I was questioning what was being told to me, and that made it feel really inauthentic. That made it feel like I just have to kind of, like, digest all of this. You just wanna kinda shove all of this down my throat, and you want this to be my truth because this is your truth. Although, based on the behaviors of different people in my family and around me at that time, also felt like a lot of hypocrisy, a lot of contradiction, a lot of do as I say and not as I do. Also had a big problem with that because I don't just adhere to authority. I don't just adhere to because I said so. This is the rule. I'm the adult. I'm the elder. I'm the priest. I'm the almighty this. Like, I don't just jump into something because it's trendy or because other people are doing it or because I'm told that this is what I need to do in order to achieve some element of salvation in my life. I will tell you that at 15 years old, I broke away from that path. And it was very interesting because I just started having more questions that I didn't feel like were being answered. And I started noticing that I was being pulled into some new directions, meaning I went to bookstores, I went to libraries a lot. And what was happening was I was getting drawn into the metaphysical area. Metaphysics and spirituality beyond the scope of organized religion pulled me in like crazy. And I started asking questions like, what is the difference between, what Jesus was teaching? Because all I would ever learn about, and if you're raised on a particular religion, maybe you can relate with this, that all I ever really learned about was like that framework, that path of thought and belief and structure. But then, as I got older, I started to realize, like, going into 11, 12, 13, 15 years old, I started really wondering what else is there because there are other religions out there. I know that when I was in elementary school, I had a friend who was Muslim, and our town actually built a mosque not too far away from the Catholic church that I was going to. And it was an interesting time because I got to really observe a lot of people's different reactions and responses to the development and the construction of this other religious place, this other religious institution where other people that did not share that Christian or Catholic path, if they are Muslim, this is where they go to worship. And it's like, oh, okay, so there are other things out there. There is Judaism, there is Muslim, there is Hinduism, there is Buddhism, there is, like all of a sudden I started realizing like everybody thinks they're right. Everybody thinks that their way is the way because that's also how it was conveyed to me is like, especially if you've been to Catholic Church, the Apostolic or the Nicene Creed, when they acknowledge like there's only one God, this is the only church, this is the one, this is the Son of God, this is what happened, and da 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 da. And they get you to recite it and recite it and recite it every week. It's a brainwashing, in my opinion. So if you are Catholic or Christian or whatever you align with in that respect, like I'm not saying any of this to be disrespectful. I am saying this because this has been my experience. And this entire thing that I'm going to be sharing over the next several months until, my trip, until and coming back from my trip, having a lot of reflections about that journey. This really isn't about anybody else, but my experience, my journey. And so if you don't agree with me, like, that is completely fine. I'm not here to be palatable. I'm not here to make sure that I say all of the right things and that I relay this information through a perfectly refined framework so that everybody is on the same page with me and you're getting all of this beautifully sequenced information. It's not like that at all. I would say this is a vlog of my experiences and what I am also noticing as I reflect on my life and I navigate this journey because every single one of us are on a journey. Some people are very pleased with having the structure to their life where, they work their Monday to Friday, they work their 9 to 5, they have their weekends, they have a very particular way of living their life through this orderly fashion of what has been expected of them. And they feel very comfortable with that. And honestly, like whatever is good for you, own that. But it doesn't mean that I am rejecting you or I am rejecting your context or your personal experience. Like, every single one of us on this planet have our own unique personal experiences. And I think it's just very interesting that, social media has been able to bring so many of us together and yet at the same time create so much division because of everybody's personal experiences. And then the ego comes in and people feel like they have to retaliate and they have to stand up for themselves and they have to protect their values and they have to make sure that whatever they perceive to be of danger to those values and their resources and all of that, that we eliminate it, we keep it at bay. It is bad, it is evil, it is blah, 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 blah. And I am coming from a place of I am a human who is living a human experience, but also somebody who has been on a very profound spiritual path since I was in my younger years as a teenager, like my younger teenage years. And I'm going to share things that are really potent and really revealing and really vulnerable. And I'm not saying anything to make anybody feel that opposition or that contrast, but that if that is what you feel when you are witnessing me or listening to me or participating in just being on this journey with me, I ask you to just reflect back. Why does this make me feel this way? Why does this feel threatening to me? Why does this bother me? Because what I'm going to be sharing is my particular truth. And we each have our own particular truth. And there will be some people that absolutely are like, oh, she's speaking her truth. And I totally feel that truth. And there were gonna be some people that are like, "I'm kind of curious, I'm kind of interested because there are things that resonate and there are some things that don't resonate, but I kinda wanna know more." And then there are gonna be some people that are like, "This is so against everything that I have ever believed, and, this is bad and wrong and blah, 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 blah." I am not here to make sure that you like everything that I have to say. This is actually one of the biggest reasons why this journey is so important right now, is because when I decided to go through all of the egoic powers, the 7 egoic powers that it is said in the Bible, it is said in the book of Mark that Jesus cleanses Mary Magdalene of 7 demons. I do not believe that they were demons. Okay. That is not how I interpret that gospel. And that is not how I connect with that material. I connect with it in the way that it is described in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, which is not a canonical gospel that did not make the cut to be in the Bible, but also because only 3 copies were available and they were not seen by the eyes of humans since probably they were written all the way up until 1945, where these canisters were discovered in Kamadi, and I know that there were 3 different locations, 2 within Egypt, I believe, and then 1 within Greece, where these works were unearthed and were in these very well-preserved jars that held the gospels of non-canonical apostles. And that is actually what interests me so much more because to me, that's like raw material. That's like, oh, they couldn't get their hands on this. I don't believe that Constantine was like, oh, yes, let's just make sure everything that is conveyed in this book is so crystalline, clear, and reflective of what this man's message was, because I don't see that at all in any of these works. I actually had to do so much deep dive into those who are not on the agenda of trying to prove something or disprove something, but simply on a quest for truth as to who these people were, what actually happened, what this actually represents, what is the actual symbolism of it, which symbolism is very subjective. And so, like, there are things that have become very clear to me. I'm also a psychic medium. So I've connected with this material also on a much more visceral level where I have had visions. I have had like really in depth, very profound spiritual experiences with these divine beings. And so, like, bringing all of that to you, not along the framework of trying to prove or disprove anything, but just on a quest for truth and how I can embody this truth in my life and live it in the fullness that I came here to live it. Because I don't actually believe that when Jesus was crucified, that he went through all of this as a symbol of self-sacrifice for the sins of humanity. This was absolutely a self-sacrifice, but I believe that the sacrifice was actually more in alignment of the divine human and the portal of love and ascension and of breaking free of humans' enslavement and endless suffering. And we also have to look at the time in which these things happened, right? Like, we have to look at what was happening in the world, in that part of the world, in that time frame, okay? To kind of get an understanding of the massive contrast that Jesus represented in that time, but why his message was so important during that time for the people, and why that message of being like accessing that divine human, accessing the love, the kingdom of heaven being within you, the God self being within you. And then also the balance of the masculine and the feminine within you and without you. Everything is like as within and so without, as above and so below. So there are so many other themes that show up here in this journey for me where it's like I'm very I love the hermetic philosophies. I love so many things. I want to be able to say all of this and convey the true purpose of love, not transactional love, not being able to prove something to somebody, not meeting an expectation kind of love, not, punishing love or withholding of love or rejection. That's why journeying through these seven powers of the ego is such a critical path because we have all it's so funny because we can look at the times that Jesus walked the earth, who he walked the earth with, what he was talking about, and why this is so relevant to his sacrifice. Not because of all of these sinful people. And it says in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene that when Peter asks Jesus about sin, he says, sin is not real. It's not real. What it could be, though, because if we trace back sin, it actually is like the base of it. That root word in Greek, Latin means to miss the mark, to go off course. And so, how he describes it is that it's basically the infidelity of your soul. It is giving into things and taking yourself off of this path where you do miss the mark of your divine human. That is the power of the ego, not because we were born of original sin. This is not about Eve picking an apple off of a tree. Like, I'm not even going to get into all of the things that I truly believe about the Old Testament in this particular video, not to say that it won't come up in a future video, but this is just to kind of give some backstory as to the foundations of what has brought me here. When I told my mother that I did not want to make my confirmation because I do not believe that I need an intermediary between myself and the divine, whether that just be divine source, a creator. the Great Spirit, God. Like, I don't care what it's called. I don't care how other people perceive it. How I perceive it is a divine source of consciousness that is both masculine and feminine. The masculine part does very particular things, the feminine part does very particular things, and together they weave this beautiful existence, this beautiful creation. And then throughout time, it has been completely washed away because patriarchal beliefs that women should not have power or have a voice, and that women do not replicate the body of Jesus because we are women and not men, that we cannot separate ourselves from our sexuality, but a man can. They did not want women to have a voice or leadership within the church. However, in very, very, very early Christianity, before Constantine won the war and was, making Christianity the religion of the state, before all of that, Christianity did have female priests that were preaching this news and preaching these teachings of godliness and divinity within the self to masses of people throughout the Middle East. Okay. It wasn't until the fourth century that they've abolished that. Okay. They did not want women to have any element of leadership in the church, and they have changed a lot of different things in the New Testament to reflect that value, their value. But that is not Jesus's value. Okay. That was not the value of Jesus, to say that women were not equal and that women did not have a place in the church to be leading, teaching, and supporting and guiding other individuals who wanted to learn and be a part of that congregation. And it's so interesting what is happening, like, right now astrologically, like, things that are happening right now astrologically, like us having this square with the dark feminine moon during this eclipse today, which is also a 3/3 day, transformation, metamorphosis, rebirth, and then also to have this, I believe, hold on, let me think really quick. This opposition with the Virgo, my words, it's Mercury retrograde, by the way, as well, to have the opposition with Venus and Pisces right now, which is also conjunct the North Node. Like, that is actually a really big deal. It's actually a really big deal astrologically right now for this to be happening, because what it's pointing to is the fact that we are digging into the roots of an ancient feminine principle. We are digging into history, to the ancient world where there was balance, there was matriarchy, there was patriarchy, there was a balance within humanity to know that all hold power, all are relevant and can do it in different ways. Just as I would not expect my husband to deliver our children because it is physically impossible, just as much as it would be almost physically impossible for me to move some very large, heavy piece of furniture, that my husband would find it probably much easier to do that with. You know what I mean? Like, our bodies are different. They were set up for different things. They have different purposes and they play different roles. But when it comes to speaking, when it comes to embodiment, when it comes to expressing, when it comes to channeling, when it comes to being the bridge between worlds and the mouthpiece and the portal, the transformer of all things, that is womanhood. Okay? That is womanhood. That is sovereignty and sacred feminine. And to say that we don't have a place to speak that truth, that we're not worthy because of our sexuality, is in itself a sin. Okay? That is an infidelity. That is a lie. Okay? And so it makes me wonder, why did they want us having so much power? Why didn't they want us having this ability to speak and to teach and to preach and to lead and to guide? And I think that because, honestly, there is such insecurity during those times, obviously before technology and science, and they did not understand how, a woman's body does what it does. And I think that was very threatening to a lot of men. that it seemed like, wow, women have a lot of power. Women have a lot of ability. I may not be able to build a house the way a man does. I might not be able to fix certain things the way that a man does, but all of my tools are within my body, like the transforming abilities, the ability that I have to create life within me and deliver that life into the world and then feed that new life from my body. There is something so sacred and so beautiful and blissful and magical and mystical about that. And I truly believe that a lot of people felt very threatened by that. A lot of men felt very threatened by that. And so in no way, shape, or form is that the decree of Jesus during those times, because he had women who were deaconesses who were speaking alongside of him. And Mary Magdalene was one of those women. Not to mention the fact that there are multiple verses within a variety of scripture that allude to their physical relationship and how he kissed her on the mouth and how they were behind closed doors often and how he was teaching her things that he was not teaching the other disciples. And it angered some of them. It made them, especially Peter, he felt very rejected and threatened because this was happening. And it wasn't until, I mean, he definitely had voiced his opinion a couple of times where Jesus interjected and, after Jesus died and moved on to the next world, Peter expressing his frustration with Mary, now that Jesus isn't here and he has an awful lot to say. And Levi steps in and defends her because Jesus left her and Jesus gave her this ability to teach. He told her what to go do, as his partner, as his companion. And so this is the journey of love, not just romantic love, but love that exists within ourselves, love that has always existed within ourselves, but we have constantly been called outside of ourselves to meet the expectations and to drive harder and to force things and to make sure that we are living these clean and perfect lives, but not for us, for something else that is out there that they still can't quite describe in a really in a strong way, in my opinion. Like it's not I don't like the way they talk about it. I don't like the way they convey God. I don't like the way they convey Jesus's death. I don't like the way that they convey the relationship that he had with Mary Magdalene or what and who she was while she walked this earth. And so that is this journey for this year for me is traveling through my body, my heart, my mind, and my spirit in a way that I feel very close to Mary Magdalene in the ways that she also did it. And traversing so many obstacles, so many struggles, so much pain and strife to know that you hold this potent, potent power within you, that you are so deeply loved, that you are seen so clearly. And then also how you can be so misunderstood, how you can be not believed, how you can be cast aside and rejected and told that you are lesser than. And the problem is that we don't know which version to believe. We get stuck. And that is also the ego. Because it's like, of course, I want to believe that I am capable. Of course, I want to believe that I am all of these beautiful, magical things, that God lives within me, that there is no separation, that my suffering is a byproduct of the egoic self trying to self protect and trying to pave a way through. But I also know that I can be difficult. I also know that sometimes I have an attitude and I speak very strongly and I have very strong feelings and emotions and opinions and certain things that drive my primal instinct to go in certain directions. And I also know that when I do that, I upset people. I also know that I provoke and offend and rattle cages. But again, I'm not here to be palatable. I am here to awaken and to provoke anyone who is ready, willing, or feels the call to start really questioning your reality and question your beliefs and question what is true and question what is meant for you as a body, soul, mind, and spirit. Like, I feel like what's meant for us is so much bigger than what we've ever anticipated for ourselves because the ego also imposes so much self limitation upon us. So, with that being said, I'm going to be starting the first leg of the journey with the realm of darkness. And that is going to be in the next video where I am going to discuss the realm of darkness. That is the first egoic pillar that we are going to navigate and how we are going to deconstruct it so that we can create the wholeness, the love, and the light within ourselves and self illuminate to express that into the world.